I don't know what it is about old cemeteries that I like. They're just always so peaceful, and they remind me of how short life is, and how if we want to do something in this life, we probably should do it as soon as possible. Getting eaten by mosquitoes out here. Yeah, putting stuff off. It's really easy to do. I've done plenty of it, and I've seen a lot of people do plenty of it. But I try not to. I always tell people if they want to take adventures, it just gets harder the older you get, and it's just true. It's kind of like a race where the older you get, in theory, you get wiser, but you have less opportunities to benefit from that wisdom, if that makes sense. I think it does. But I have a friend who showed me a really good quote once. It said, the passage of time doesn't necessarily guarantee growth. And it took me a while for that to sink in, but I understand it now. Because there are a lot of people who are old, in their 70s, 80s, whatever, and they're not wise. And there are some people who are in their 20s or 30s, or I mean, even old souls. I've seen people that are in their teens who just have this wisdom beyond their years. So yeah, the passage of time doesn't always guarantee growth. But if all things are equal, I would say middle age is kind of a nice little crossroads where you've got enough experience in life where you realize that, you know, something like this means something more than just a bunch of stones sticking out of the ground. It's time to live your life while you can. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of why I roam around these once in a while. I especially like the ones up here in the upper Midwest because, I don't know, the old names and the fact that you can really only see them for a couple months out of the year and then they're usually buried in snow. So let's wander around for a minute and see if we can find some interesting names and, you know, I don't know, extrapolate a story from it or something. Yeah, just humble me for a minute or two if you would. As I'm wandering around here, I'm noticing this Polish name a lot, Soldensky. There's some other ones just right around the corner. These isolated little towns often, especially in the Midwest, you'll find a lot of the same names because obviously people stuck around. Up until recently, you know, it's only kind of a modern phenomenon to want to be rushing out of town at the age of 18 because you can't stand how boring it is or whatever, you know. It's used to be generation after generation kind of took up the trade of their parents and their grandparents, and we lost that somewhere along the way. Another thing I like to do as I wander around these old cemeteries is try to figure out what the cultural origins are of the last names. Sometimes I think I got it. You know, they're pretty obvious ones, like I saw a McLeod back there, and I mean, I can safely assume that's probably Scottish. And anything that ends with a ski, you know, is most likely Polish. Then there's just like the Anglo-Saxon names like Carter and Walker and Thomas and stuff like that, and then you'll see some I guess you could say they're obviously Nordic of some sort or Scandinavian, like Peterson or Gunderson or something like that. But there's these other ones that I really can't get a read on. Let me see if I can find a good example. I mean, so let's see if I can even pronounce this one. Vaudreuil, which, if I had to guess, might be French because of the way the vowels are positioned. I don't know, I hardly paid attention in school, to tell you the truth. Maybe I'll try to find one more example here. Herbert, that's pretty obviously just like what Anglo-Saxon English. Yeah, here's one. What about like Lefebvre. Lefebvre. You know, everybody should be asked while they're alive, what's the origins of your name? You know, where are you from? Where's your family from? What's your heritage? My last name, Netz, N-E-T-Z, is probably pretty obviously Germanic. But I know we have some relatives in Sweden. We actually had some visit us when I was a teenager. So we, you know, I know for sure we have some Swedish ancestors, but you know, Netz sounds very German to me. And then my mom's side are kind of Irish, I believe. Maybe one more here. O'Driscoll. That's Irish. I would almost bet money on that. Oli. Not really sure. Maybe someone would know. Italian, maybe? So, yeah, I don't know. The things you do. Anybody else into this kind of stuff, or is this too boring? Here's some more Soldinskis. So more than likely I'm going to put this part of the video on the Uperloper channel, because I try to keep Backwaters and Backroads, you know, strictly adventure content for the most part. I've done some ranting over there, but that was before I had this one to kick it over on. So if you're here, you know, I always gotta tell myself, to give myself permission to kind of just let loose and talk more openly, is that if you're watching this, you probably chose to come here. So, and at the end of the day, you know, people can always just click out of anything. So, but it's always a balance between respecting your audience and trying to cater to your audience, and being true to yourself. You know, like someone that makes music has to both satisfy their own creative outlets and think of their audience, or they probably would never have an audience, you know. So I think it's always a balance, just like everything in life. But what I wanted to try to talk about here for a minute is something that just keeps on my mind lately as I'm paying attention to the news, you know, to what's going on in the world, and filtering it through what I think is accurate and what's just propaganda, you know. But you know, things are getting bad. Things are going to get worse. It's not just, I know that, here, I'm going to switch hands here if I can. I know that the world's always had troubles, and I know that, you know, even people that are alive today are saying, you know, this is the race riots happen every 5 years, you know, I've heard people say. Or, you know, economic downturns, they come and they go. I get it. It's not like this is the first time that America's had some troubles, you know, and the rest of the world even. But this one feels pretty significant. It feels pretty paradigm shifty, you know, if that's a word, paradigm shift. In the sense of like this COVID thing, and just how going for broke the political parties are going to keep power and get power. There's a lot of forces at work. So I guess, you know, there's a guy that I listen to. I will link his channel in the description below. It's called Quantum of Conscience. Quantum of Consciousness, I believe. A guy named Matt. And he's a smart guy. I mean, I dig him. I really am picky with who I push the subscription button on. And I've been listening to this guy's back catalog, and I find him to be very enlightening. So, and he basically says, you know, when you're trying to understand what's happening in the world in a real way, I mean, some people don't. Some people don't want to. Some people aren't capable of it. and they just go about their merry way in life. And in some ways, it's like this ignorance is bliss, and in some ways, I admire them. I envy them. I'm not like that. My brain just is always trying to figure out what's really going on. It's kind of like, I think there's a line in The Matrix where, what is it? Somebody's explaining to Neo about the first time the machine world tried to enslave the human population, and their cerebral cortex kept trying to wake up from a dream because they made it too good. Because people couldn't believe it, that it could be too good, So they lost whole crops, I think is the line from the movie, and I always went like, yeah. I mean, that movie's just so epically. It's one of the best movies of all time. It's an absolute must-watch, in my opinion. But Matt over in Quantum of Consciousness, he says there's basically like always 3 levels to everything you're thinking about, and the first level, being very, just kind of paraphrasing all this, is that the first level is kind of understanding the basics, of what's going on, like what you would see in the news, like what Tucker Carlson would be saying on Fox, or what, if you listen to CNN and what whoever is over there is saying, or whoever is reporting kind of like the bare bones facts of what's going on. But as quickly as you can, you want to get to the second level, which is, what does it mean? What is the deeper meaning? What is the deeper ramifications of that topic, and it couched in the bigger picture, of what it means for society, what it means for America, what have you. And as quickly as possible, just as quickly as possible, a person needs to get to the third step, which is, what does it mean to you? And how is it going to affect your life and the people that you care about, your little world? And so I really took that to heart, and I started to think about that, and I'm like, yeah, I get stuck on the first and the second step a lot, but it's very important to quickly get to the third step, which is, how does it affect your life personally? For example, all the riots that are going on in the cities right now, which aren't really affecting me directly. Indirectly, they're affecting all of us. But, if you live out in the hinterlands like I do, they're not really affecting you directly yet. But what it means to me is, how can a person prepare themselves for it? So the first step is to kind of understand the bare bones basics of what's going on. The second step is, what does it mean? And the bigger ramifications. And the third step is, how does it affect you and the people you love and care about? And what can you do about it? And so my instinct's always been, I don't really want to fight. Everything's a fight or flight response, arguably. I don't really want to fight anymore. I will if something or somebody brings trouble to my door, but I don't really want to fight. I'd rather flight. I moved to the end of the road, as I know you guys already know if you watch my channel. And I kind of am starting to feel like I need to move even farther out. And so that's partially why I'm in Grand Marais, Michigan today. It's just going to another kind of remote town and feeling it out and getting what I think, how a town like this would fare if things really get bad, like, they start turning off essential infrastructures to modern society. I got some thoughts on that. In a nutshell, I don't think Grand Marais would be any better off or worse off than the town I'm already in. That's just my feeling. So that's what I was thinking of today. And if you guys have any thoughts about that, I would very much like to hear them. I always do. And I read every comment I ever get. I used to respond to every comment I get, but the channel's gotten big enough and I've gotten enough comments now that sometimes it's hard to respond to all of them. But I do try. And I'll tell you, just floating down a river on a shanty boat at 5 miles an hour gives you all the time in the world to respond to anything and everybody. But I just want everyone to know that if you do leave a comment, I absolutely read it, and I think about it. And sometimes, if I can, I respond to it. So, okay. Well, thanks for listening to me. Thanks for being here. Thanks for putting up with me, as always. And we'll continue on. I'll see you over in Backwaters and Backroads. And I'll catch you later.